Let's jump right into creating. All right, I'm starting with a watercolor paper, and I am writing down with a pencil everything that I am shedding. So I start out the writing with I am shedding, and then I just let it all out, bringing awareness to all of my limited beliefs, all of my doubt, all of my shame, all of the things that do not serve my most radiant version. And I encourage you to take your time really inviting yourself to purge and shed here. And maybe just sit with it. And then from there, we're going to erase it. So get a big rubber eraser and allow the pieces of the eraser to stay on the page, because we'll just notice the eraser shards as the skin being physically shed from the surface, inviting us to create something new and radiant and transformative in its place. And so we gather the pieces, and maybe you set them on your altar in reverence, and maybe you do something different with them, but set them aside for now. And then we have this beautiful page to work on. So I've got a bunch of different brushes available, clean water, and a watercolor palette. With my big round brush, I'm just saturating some of the space on the page with water. And then I'll move into bringing some color in. And so the intention with the background is just to create an abstract, fun, playful, flowy, color expressive space so that you can just play with the energy. And I encourage you to have some of your inspirational images, your color palette in your awareness so that you can have the colors inform what mood you're interested in. So if you created a mood board or you've taken some inspiration, having that available to you. I have that pretty window set with the garden that I showed you in the slideshow. I have that up on my computer screen to reference as I create this entire work of art. So yeah, playing with the colors that feel alive for me, these orange reds, these pinks, pale greens, and rich golden. And so just allowing yourself to play, and maybe you work on several backgrounds, because we're going to want to let this background completely dry before we move on to the next area. So feel free to make as many backgrounds as you wish. Then come into a sketching phase where you move into what kind of imagery you want to create and sketch a lot, just little sketches. I arrived on this piece here and wrote myself a few notes about how I wanted to move forward. So I'm going to be using a beautiful blue color to come into a negative space painting. So I've got a paper palette on the left there. That's the gray rectangle. And I have drawn out my snake shape, right? Referencing the sketch that I just showed you on the paper that has a dry background. And so I have just my simple shapes that I'm going to be leaving the color of the background. And I'm going to paint the blue color around the snake shape. And I also have a star shape and a flower shape. So you want to figure out what imagery you want to leave this wild background, and then what areas you want to color in with maybe a solid color. So I'm mixing up these blues that I've put on my palette to create the color that feels most in resonance for me. And so I mix the color and then begin to fill in the background. So the reason it's called a negative space painting is because the subject matter becomes the background. And then I paint around it, creating a new background, right? And of course, you can paint the subject matter and leave the background all wild. You could do it whatever way you wanted. But for this piece, maybe you follow along with this idea and begin coloring in around the shapes, revealing the subject of the snake or whatever subject you're painting. So yeah, just taking your time, and maybe you have some music playing or a podcast or a YouTube video about a fun astrologer, and you just allow yourself to flow with this color meditation, right? The universe speaks in colors and symbols. And so when we allow ourselves to just invite some meditation, some space to flow with a single color, covering all the spaces that are not your image. And breathe and relax your body and play with the simplicity of just using a color to create your new background. So coming in with a bigger brush now to just bring the color all the way to the edges, and I have a table that I can kind of paint on, so then we're going to let that completely dry and then move into some playful motifs on the snake figure. So I have a red, orange, and sort of a pink, and I've got some white. And this paint is, not expensive. That's craft paint, probably costs $2. And so I'm creating a saturated tint. So if you add white to a color, you make it a tint. So I didn't want it to be quite as dark as coming right out of the tube. And so I mixed a couple colors together to create a red-orange that is found in the background that I painted in the watercolor, right? So you can see on the right side of the snake body from this angle, that similar color. So it's nice to have nods to colors in the composition so that the composition can dance and flow and have similarities in color. So as you can see, I'm creating this 3-petal flower motif that continues along the body of the snake. And I just take the stem part of that flower and allow it to just be at the center of the snake's body. And I'm allowing the petals to come outside of the shape of the snake, just for some more aliveness, just wild spring energy bursting from the container to greet the sky. So going all the way down to the tip of the tail with this motif. Now I'm going to add some more white to that color that I had mixed, so it just becomes lighter. And I'm going to add a little bit of variety of a little bit more of a highlight, lighter value in the flower motif that I've already painted. So the flower motif is still wet. I had just painted it, and I'm just coming in and giving the petals a little bit of variety. All the while inviting presence, inviting play, inviting spontaneity, getting excited and experimental and curious about the creative process. Having a map and letting your intuition guide you to create the way that feels good. So inspired by the window frame in my inspirational image, I'm creating a border with that lighter red orange. Just a simple motif going from edge to edge. And I'm taking this color up about a third of the way on each side of the border as well. I'm going to change up the color, adding a little bit of marigold yellow, really beautiful golden yellow, and a little bit of white, and then a little bit of that color that I'd already mixed in. So inviting some more orange to come into the palette. And then I'm going to lightly come over one of those flowers I'd already done in that red orange, and then continue on with the border. So it just has a nice subtle shift of color for a little bit of variety, right? So there's repetition, doing the same thing over and over, and then a variety, adding different color. And then I'm taking that same orange color and just adding a little bit of orange within the flowers along the snake. And this orange is also talking to the background. So now I'm going to add a different color to the composition. I'm adding some yellow, some of that sage green, and I'm going to mix a new color completely. And then coming into a nice stem for this flower that I had left painted around, right? So it has the watercolor. And then I'm going to just add some simple, folky, repetitive leaves here on the stem, nice and symmetrical, just to create a little bit of variety in the background, adding more of that essence of being in a spring garden, but with a simple and folky style that is really accessible for anybody. And that's just been my jam lately, is this simple folky style. I've been painting doors in this style, and it's just been really fun. So I'm taking that same green color and I'm going to finish up the border that I had been doing. And because I added a hint of that marigold orange in the green, it merges with the area that I had painted on the side really nicely. Yeah, just overlapping a little bit so that they blend together as they move. And now with that orange color that's still on my palette, I've decided I want to add a few just drip motifs on the edges here, just to pull in some more shapes and not have quite as much of that blue in the background. And I'm doing the same thing over here on the left and just playing with how many I want to have, making it a little bit different. And then I'm taking that green color and writing the word shed. So now I'm taking that green and I'm adding leaves to my floral motif in the snake body. And I'm inviting some of the green leaves to escape into the background. And I'm inviting some of the leaves to stay within the body that is painted in that watercolor. And just really inviting a variety of size leaves here, inviting the page to turn as I paint so that it is comfortable. And I'm using a liner brush. You can use any kind of brush you like. I paint a little more neatly, which is why I pushed myself to be more wild and abstract with the watercolors at first, just to bring that life into the piece. Yeah, and just kind of moving around, being mindful of what areas are wet. This leaf is going to help break up the background from the foreground a little bit. There we go. Yeah. So playing with bringing more life, more bursting radiance, more earthy energy to my snake. And this could be a great place to stop. It's fun, it's playful, it's organic, it has a lot of nice movement and rhythm and repetition. But I've decided to go a little bit further. So I let everything dry, and now I have some more of that blue that I used in the background with some white. So I'm going to make a really, really, really light blue. I thought about going pure white, but since there is no pure white in the piece, I wanted to just hint at the blue background. And I've decided for an extra punch of contrast, I'm just going to come in and outline on top, right? Layer on top of the orange flower motif in the snake with the white. So I'm leaving it outlined so you can still see the beautiful orange, red-orange variations that I painted in the windows of these shapes I'm creating. But this just really gives the whole piece a nice pop and invites an element of the essence of shedding the old and birthing the new all at once, right? Because it's all connected in this beautiful rhythm of life. And I'm once again using a liner brush. Now, you could easily use a paint pen for this if you prefer to use a paint pen versus lining with paint. And with these repetitive strokes, repetitive shapes, we can really come into contemplation and meditation about the year of the snake. And so really inviting the process to be contemplative and continuing to really invite the spaciousness of what you're shedding to bloom something truly radiant and transformative in your life. I take that same light blue color and go ahead and paint over a couple of these drops on the side, just for some coherence in the piece. And then I come in with a little bit more of the blue to create just a slightly lighter color than the background. And I just go through the whole piece and add a little bit of movement with some little lines swirling around. And then I add a tongue and a little bit more detail, and then the piece is complete. So playing with your material choices, finding time to shed the old and birth the new. Thank you so much for creating with me. Enjoy.